Be the voice of a child. Mandatory reporting in Georgia. HB 1176 compliance training for Junior League of Atlanta volunteers. This video was developed as a collaborative project of the Advocacy and Initiatives Council and the Training Council of the Junior League of Atlanta. This training is purely for educational purposes and is intended for use by JLA members for training and capacity building purposes. The training has 3 designed outcomes. 1, to become familiar with HB 1176 and mandatory reporting obligations. 2, to recognize signs of 5 forms of child abuse. And 3, to understand the required reporting protocol. This is an introductory training to provide cursory information on your new status as a mandatory reporter in Georgia. For a more intensive review of mandatory reporting obligations, child abuse prevention, and DFACS protocol, we recommend that you enroll in the free online training course created by Care Solutions and sponsored by the GOCF at www.prosolutionstraining.com. The JLA cannot provide CEU credits for this training. For CEU or professional development credits, please access the official GOCF materials at the address above. So what is HB 1176 and what does it do? On July 1, 2012, Georgia Governor Nathan Deal signed HB 1176 into law. This builds on existing laws that establish who a mandatory reporter is and what the reporting protocol should be. It also expands on the definition of school to include pre-K to college and extends mandatory reporting obligations to all volunteers in nonprofit organizations. So who is a mandatory reporter and what do they do? A mandatory reporter is anyone who works directly with a child and is sworn to look out for the welfare of that child. For example, teachers, daycare workers, police, doctors, and child advocates are all mandatory reporters, and now so are you. A mandatory reporter must file a report of suspicions of child abuse or neglect to the Department of Child and Family Services, or DFACS, within 24 hours of the initial suspicion. It is a misdemeanor if you do not follow this rule and can be punished with a $1,000 fine. It's important that you contact the DFACS office in the county in which the child resides. You should listen to the child, but you should not directly question the child about the abuse. This must be done within 24 hours of the suspicion. If DFACS offices are closed, you may call 1-855-GA-CHILD or 1-855-422-4453 to report. If you believe the child is in immediate danger, then you should call 911. There are 5 main forms of child abuse: neglect, physical abuse, sexual exploitation, and emotional or verbal abuse. There are 3 main elements of child abuse to be aware of when you're a mandatory reporter. You should be familiar with the physical attributes, the behavioral indicators, and the acting out components. We'll walk you through the main attributes of each form of abuse by identifying the physical presentations, the behavioral presentations, and the acting out behaviors. Some physical signs of neglect may include being underweight, having poor hygiene, inappropriate dress, or consistent hunger. Behaviorally, there may be begging, stealing, or hoarding of food, constant fatigue, being overly needy for attention, or assuming adult responsibilities. Some signs of physical abuse include severe bruising, bites, welts, or fractures, marks in a pattern or in various stages of healing, high rates of accidents, burns in the shape of an object. Behaviorally, the child may be frightened of a caregiver, may not want to go home, have poor social interactions, bully smaller children, or act out with stuffed animals, and have poor self-concept. Note, corporal punishment is legal in Georgia. That is, spanking as a form of punishment is not alone considered abuse. Excessive spanking that leaves marks, bruising, or patterns of it may be considered abuse if severe. Sexual abuse involves a child doing anything for an adult's sexual gratification. This includes fondling, sexual exploitation, incest, exposing them to pornography, or forcing a child to participate in activities. Some signs of sexual abuse are difficulty walking or sitting, torn, stained, or bloody underwear, pain or bruising, bloods or cuts in the genital area, and STDs. Behaviorally, there may be excessive genital contact, sexual knowledge beyond their age, sleeping and eating disorders, poor peer relations, or unexplained aggression. Sexual exploitation is conduct by a person that allows, permits, encourages, or forces a child to be prostituted or engage in pornography. A victim of child sexual exploitation may have received food, drugs, money, or shelter in exchange for sex. Additional signs include inappropriate dress, little to no eye contact, weight loss, secretive or isolation behavior, disturbing artwork, or bursts of crying. Emotional abuse occurs when the child is in a negative emotional space. It may include verbal abuse that expects too much of a child that age, causes a child to question their self-worth, constantly criticizes, belittles, or insults a child, or fails to provide adequate nurturing for the child. Physically, there may be speech disorders, hyperactive or disruptive behaviors, lags in development, or failing to thrive. Behaviorally, there may be cruelty towards others, a lack of self-help skills, OCD, conduct and learning disorders, rocking, sucking, or biting oneself, negative statements about oneself. It is important for us to remember what our role as a mandatory reporter is and what it is not. As a mandatory reporter, we should be aware of risk factors, notice family stressors and isolation, listen to the child, avoid why questions, and act quickly. But we should rely on the Department of Family and Child Services to investigate the suspicions, question the children and families/caregivers, determine whether it is substantiated or not, remove the child from the environment, and ensure the child's safety. Finally, we would like to thank you for all the work that you do to empower women and children at risk to become self-reliant and for participating in this compliance training. For a comprehensive training in child abuse prevention and mandatory reporting protocols in Georgia, please complete the training produced by Care Solutions and sponsored by the Governor's Office of Children and Families. It can be found online through www.prosolutionstraining.com for free access. Remember, you can always call 1-855-GA-CHILD to report your concerns about a child, day or night. Consulted for this project include internet resources from Georgia CASA, Prevent Child Abuse America, Colorado Bar Association, the Mayo Clinic, and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Materials from the Governor's Office for Child and Families, specifically the Georgia Statistics and Child Abuse Indicators, were adapted into this training.